I didn't know if they were all related because I knew her from the American Cancer Society.
Yeah, she's still there.
Okay. Hey, JJ.
Hello.
Hello, board.
Good afternoon, Chair.
We've got Cindy, Rita, and JJ on. Board members. See if I can get everyone. And Paula. 1, 2, 3.
Mike Privet is actually logging in now.
Okay. 4.
Mr. Merchant, I was going to make a phone call. I'm not seeing our first applicant online.
Okay. If you want to make that call, we'll wait a few minutes.
Okay, thank you. Okay, Chair, I made that call and he's logging on.
Okay. Well, we'll go ahead and get some of this preliminary stuff out of the way, and then hopefully he's logged in fully. Other than that, do you think we are ready to continue?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And like last meeting, tethering from my cell phone, and so hopefully that continues to work, but if it doesn't,
Uh-oh.
Your chair, you froze there.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, now we lost him.
Back.
okay. Can you hear me now, Cindy?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. As I mentioned, and apparently, I'm tethering from my cell phone, so it might cut in and out. And so if I do get disconnected, Mr. Privet, can you take over?
Yep.
Okay. Looks like this is going pretty weak connection. So I might call in if I keep getting weak connection and just not have video on. But we'll try to continue. So welcome everyone to the City of Oklahoma City Board of Adjustment meeting, special meeting for March 18th, 2021. If the meeting's disconnected at any time, the meeting will be stopped and reconvened once the connection can be restored. If the connection is not able to be restored within 30 minutes, items remaining for consideration will be continued to the next regularly scheduled Board of Adjustment meeting. The agenda and documents, as well as the minutes, are located on okc.primegov.public or .com/public/portal. For anyone wishing to speak on an agenda item or to speak under citizens to be heard, hopefully you have already arranged with city staff by phone or email, and we will call on you at the appropriate time. We will call the case, and we'll recognize the applicant or representative to speak, and then we'll recognize any protests, and then we will close with the applicant speaking. The board will deliberate and ask questions, and then the board will vote. If you've not prearranged with city staff to speak on an item, I will regularly ask if anyone else would like to be heard on a matter. At that time, if you would like to speak, hopefully you've used the raise your hand function on Zoom, and you can use that function at any time. But if you've already arranged to speak with city staff, you should not need to use the raise your hand function. The board and staff will be notified if you do use that raise your hand function. For speakers other than the applicant, please try to limit your comments to 3 minutes. If you call in after your item has been heard, or if you have a different matter to raise with the board, you will be allowed to speak under citizens to be heard on the agenda. When you call in, staff will mute your device. We ask that all participants keep their microphones on mute until they are recognized to speak. If you're on a phone, press *6 to mute and unmute yourself. Board members will be allowed to ask questions and make comments at any time during the meeting. Please do not interrupt board members while they're speaking because we need a clear record and it makes the meetings go by much faster. Before you begin with your comments, please identify yourself by stating your name and address. And this meeting is now called to order. Ms. Lincoln, can you please call the roll?
Yes. Mr. Merchant,
Present.
Asbury,
Present.
Privet,
Present.
Voorhees,
Present.
Yabara.
Present.
And Chair, we have our quorum.
Okay, thank you. And Cindy, just for my purposes, did my connection cut out a lot during that introduction or not?
Off and on, but everything was covered.
Okay. Okay, well, the first item on the agenda is to receive the minutes from the March 4th, 2021 meeting. Do we have any changes or a motion?
I'll move we
We
receive.
approved the minutes of the meeting from the March, what was the date, March 4th meeting?
Yep.
I'll second.
Okay. So we've got a motion and a second to receive the minutes from the March 4th, 2021 meeting. Once you're able to, cast your votes, please.
Mine is not pulling up for me right now real quickly.
Neither's mine.
Probably behind the presentation screen.
Oh,
Okay.
I vote yes.
Mine just shows that it's waiting.
Oh,
I think staff,
here it comes.
And mine
Okay.
still hasn't popped up.
I think
Got it.
staff probably put your motion and your second in there.
Okay, thank you.
And then Ms. Asbury, do you still not see the voting pane?
No, I don't.
Have you hit escape whenever the meeting went full screen?
No, but I will.
Okay.
Okay, gotcha.
Okay, and now you're able to see
Yes,
voting pane?
yes.
Okay, perfect.
Oh, wait a minute, the voting, no, I'm sorry, no, I don't see the voting thing on mine, I'm sorry.
Neither do
Okay.
I. But I still vote yes.
Okay, staff, can we mark them by their voice vote for now?
That is so weird.
Yes.
And the minutes are approved. Next item on the agenda is continuance requests or withdrawals, and I believe we have a couple.
I have two today. Item 6, case 14-832, request deferral to April 1. And item 7, 14-782, request deferral to June 3rd.
Okay, was anyone on the line hoping to speak on either of those matters? Okay. Looking at those applications, both of those made sense to me. I think one of them was new and one of them was trying to work out a couple of things. So I think I can support continuing those as requested. Board members, any questions, comments, or motion?
I can make a motion. Continue items as read.
Second.
We've got a motion and a second to continue the items as requested. Once you're able to, cast your votes. And those items are continued. And Ms. Asbury and Mr. Voorhees, are you able to see the voting thing now, it looks like?
Yeah.
Yeah, got it.
Okay, perfect. Good to know going forward. Next item on the agenda. Nothing on the consent docket, so we'll move to items requiring a separate vote.
First item for public hearing is case 14780. It's a request of Kevin Craig for a variance to the side yard setback and lot coverage area for all detached accessory buildings at 10670 Northwest 107th Street.
Okay, was the applicant able to get logged in?
Yes, I am.
Okay, Mr. Craig, if you want to present your application for us. I know we've seen this once before, so maybe the quickest way is just to give us an overview and then note any changes to the application. And I noted that you had some comments to the protest that were also new. So if you want to address all of that, I think that would be helpful.
Okay, thank you very much. I'm also dialed in on my cell phone. Couple past Zoom meetings I've had, my computer decided to shut down. So in case that happens, I'll still be on. I'll have to switch over to my cell phone. But
Okay, perfect.
so yes, my name is Kevin Craig. My wife and I and two kids reside at 10670 Northwest 107th Street. We're seeking a variance to work on our development plan for our backyard. Just a brief summary of the notes that I took from the last meeting. There was a general, I believe, feeling from the board that our request was too large. There was a question about relocating the primary garage structure for the rear of the yard, which I will cover that. And there was also some concern there towards the end about setting case precedent. And I had asked at the end of the meeting, because I had found some previous cases that I felt were similar. I believe Cindy sent one of those to y'all, case 13873, just for reference. I'll go into our revised proposal. We have opted to request essentially eliminating. We had a shop, we had a pergola. Of course, we had a little dog house, another accessory building, some playground equipment. Yeah, there you go. That's a good picture. So by eliminating the pergola and reducing the size of the rear accessory building, we dropped our request down from, I don't remember exactly what it was. It was around 3,600 down to 25. Down to 2611, which is a reduction of 27%. From what was previously presented. And we are requesting considerance of reducing our side yard variance from 15 feet to 18 feet. I do know there were some letters early on of objection. I would like to go in and discuss those. There was one letter of objection from my neighbor directly to the east. We have worked out an agreement, which I actually think we had this worked out prior to the last meeting, but he is agreeable to the 18 feet. as long as we include some extra exemptions, only allowing 65 feet of playground equipment and no closer than 140 feet from the front of our property line. And that there only be grass there and no concrete or other surface within that 25 to 18 feet boundary. The other objection came from a neighbor to the rear and to the west. I spoke to the wife one time, and I gave her my number. I showed her my plans, asked her if she had any concerns to let me know. I have never heard from her. I spoke to the husband briefly. I was able to catch him coming home. He did not want to discuss it. His only comments to me were that he was upset at our HOA when he applied for his accessory structure building. They would not let him do some of the things that he wanted to do, and that he was still upset about that. He did not want to discuss my plans or anything regarding my development plan. And that was the end of that conversation. I'm also aware, I just saw it in this packet. I'm aware, I guess after our last meeting, our HOA sent in a letter as well. We mentioned in the previous meeting, because I had requested the option to submit our HOA covenants and bylaws with my submittals. I was told that HOA disputes were not considered in these cases, and that would not have a bearing on the case. So I would ask that letter or any objections from the HOA not be counted against me, at least not without the ability to counteract those. But other than that, I believe we submitted a letter of a dozen or so more of my immediate neighbors, all in approval of our original request, which was much bigger than our revised request that we're proposing today. The only other, I guess, comment I have briefly, I noticed on the submittals that there was a comment about removing I think a large animal structure. I don't know that's how I worded it. The 200-foot accessory building, that's the same building. It's just originally we proposed it at 288. And now we dropped that to essentially a 10 by 20, which is the 200 square feet. So there may have been a little miscommunication on that. If we want, now we can go into the pros and cons of site 2 that was requested by the board to look at. If you want to go down a couple slides. Yeah, right. Sorry. I guess these slides don't have numbers. I think you're in the original documents. If you would go back towards the beginning, maybe like slide 3 or 4. Yeah, so one more, maybe one more slide. Okay, this slide right here. I asked Cindy, can the board see this slide in color? Because in black and white, it's kind of hard to see.
Black and white.
I have it in color in my pocket.
You have it in color in your packet? Okay.
Yeah, I see it in the back.
Yeah, if you look at the color one, it's a lot easier to understand. So the one that's currently shown is the previous one. If you want to go back to the newer one. Right there, yeah, that's the one. And hopefully if you're on the panel, you're seeing this in color. So the green location is the requested and still the original requested and still the currently requested position for the accessory building. It was asked that I look at moving it to the rear. I mean, I had already done that, but I didn't have anything prepared to present at the first meeting. In the next slide, you'll see what I'm talking about. But so the blue position would be approximately 25 to 30 feet off the back fence line. There's an orange dotted line there. There's
Any colors here, guys?
there's a terrace that runs about, I measured it the other day, it's about 45 feet off the back of that property line. And that's represented by the orange dash line there.
I don't have these in colors, Mr. Craig, so could you refer to the property that you're talking about by the number? I think that would help.
All this is on my property.
No. I'm saying you're referring to these pictures here by blue and colors, and we don't have those in color. So I didn't know.
Is this the right one, Mr. Craig?
This is the right one, yeah.
Okay.
Okay, so now can everybody see it in color?
Yeah, I can see that one.
Okay.
Yes.
So, can you go back to that side? Yeah, right there. Okay. So site 2 was what I took away as a requested site to look at. There, like I said, that orange colored line. There's a terrace that runs through there. I don't know if you can see the yellow arrow. Kind of some darker shaded grass. This is the water path, and we'll see this in a subsequent slide. But essentially, what runoff there is, it runs behind that terrace and then across my neighbor there to the south west. So if I was to move it back there, I would have to either apply for a variance for height because the elevation is higher by about 3 feet or so towards the back of the property, or I would have to cut out this terrace, which would change the water path. And then the other thing I'd like to point out from the slide, some of the previous, I believe it was from members of the HOA, their concern would be that, and Mr. McCaslin's objection letter, he was concerned about seeing, the shop. If I was to move any size shop, even if it didn't require a variance to the rear of the property, I mean, they would be in direct line of sight of it 100% of the time. So anyway, those were a couple things I wanted to point out from this slide. If you want to go to the next slide, this is just the view of my house. I think I showed this last time. This is the view of our house and the site, looking at my neighbor's accessory building. Another reason I'd like to place it at the green location is it would also block our view of his accessory building from our backyard. To go to the next slide. So this is a picture I was able to capture after that ice storm, but you notice the top of the fence kind of shows the elevation change. You can kind of see where the top of the terrace is. Water tends to sit here back at my property for a little while after rain. And you can see the blue dashed lines and the ice melting, indicating the water flow path that I've shown on the previous slide in yellow. So that's just another representation of that terrace that runs at the back of my property. If you'll go to the next slide. So this is just the pros and cons of of moving it back or the current site that I had selected. So obviously a pro, I wouldn't need a side setback variance. Although I do feel I would need a height variance because my house is approximately 30 feet. The shop would be about 27, and it would need to be about 3 feet higher if I built it on top of that terrace and built up the backyard.
Building height measured from top of peak to bottom of the building?
Pardon?
I don't think building height takes into account the elevation of the ground. That's what I'm saying.
No, it doesn't.
Just because the ground's higher doesn't mean your building's going to be measured higher.
Okay, well, I was not aware of
Same
that.
height building.
I assumed it was an aesthetic deal. But it would also require obviously more concrete, longer driveway to get back there, which would increase obviously storm runoff. It would increase my cost, although I know that's not the board's concern. The building would also not provide shade for my backyard. The shade in the summer goes to the south east, and so essentially only part of the yard that would be shaded would be essentially behind the shop and in my neighbor's property, and that was also a main driver for the location. Like to try to provide shade for.
You would still need a variance for the square footage, regardless of where you moved it,
I
right?
still need a variance for the square footage, yes. Yeah.
Okay.
Well, that's true as well.
And remind me what that variance is again, JJ? I mean, the total, what it would be.
I mean, that's what I'm going to ask some clarifying questions here in a little bit, but
Okay.
it really depends on some of the other structures. So my understanding is he's still keeping the pergola and he wants that, what some are calling the animal shelter, which we're going to need some clarification on. But I think ultimately it's still, I had the number here somewhere, but it was still 2,200 square feet total, and he's allowed 1,250. So the building itself's 15. So he would need a variance for that size of building, even if he didn't have the other stuff.
All right.
Yeah, right now he's sitting at about 2,200 square feet. We can take the playground equipment and the small animal enclosure shouldn't come into play at all. We wouldn't count those as accessory buildings. So we're looking at the shop, the covered patio, the pavilion, and the large animal shelter.
And Mr. Craig, maybe you can clarify for us, just kind of once and for all, since it did seem like there was a bit of a question, but are you still planning on building that pavilion? Because in the board packet, it says that was one of the things that was eliminated. And
No, that is one that was eliminated. Yes.
okay, so I'll tell you what we have before us, from my understanding. 1,500 square foot shop, 500 square foot covered patio, 200 square foot accessory building. And that's, as far as the square footage, the variance that's at issue. Is that accurate?
Can you repeat that one more time? I'm sorry.
So total, we've got 1,500 square foot shop, 500 square foot patio, covered patio, and 200 square foot accessory building. And that's all, correct?
Well, I mean, I don't, I mean, based on Mr. Chamberlain's comments, yes. I mean, when I called and talked to the city, you know, any accessory structure was included, and then that was playground equipment as well, which is why I've included that in the request. If y'all are saying that it's not needed, then yeah, I mean, I don't know how that handles. I mean, I mean, on my numbers, including that, it's 2611. But if you take out the 347 and the 64, then yes, that gets you down to ish.
Yeah, my understanding is city staff has eliminated the need. They made a determination that you don't need a variance for certain things like the playground equipment and things like that. And so that, my understanding, would carry forward, and the city wouldn't later say that you actually do need a variance for that stuff. And if you do, you know, unfortunately, you'd have to pay the fee. But I assume that it would be granted if the city ever said you needed a variance for that stuff. But right now, the determination of cities that you don't need a variance for those things.
Well, that is, you know, kind of the point of, if obviously doing the plan at once is trying to eliminate, you know, I'd hate to build a shop and then, you know, want a patio and then have to go through this process again. That you understand that.
Yeah.
Why I've packaged it as I have.
Mr. Craig, what's the dimensions of the building itself?
It would be 30 by 50. I think our original proposal that we submitted was like 29 and a half by
That's 1,500 square feet, Sam.
That is correct. Yeah.
That's a little easier to swallow.
Yeah, and I bring up case 13873 just because it was real similar. You know, a lot of the structures were open structures. The variance request was their comment on their staff report was that it was also substantial. You know, they were on a much smaller lot. It was the 0.42 acre lot. And they were seeking 2508, which was, you know, 250% over. I think I watched the meeting. Some of the board's comments were, you know, like the open structures, the patios, pergolas, you know, they didn't seem those were as detrimental. But you know, that case was in 2014, obviously different panel and whatnot. But at the end of our last meeting, you know, I think it was Mr. Merchant who mentioned, you know, concern about the size and setting precedent.
Yeah, no, I appreciate you attaching that case as a reference. You know, we mentioned in the last meeting, obviously each case stands on its own, but it's good to know some kind of context. I will say, I mean, I can't imagine I would have gone on board with the yes vote on that application. I would have had them trim it down substantially. And then another consideration is the third consideration that we have to think about before granting a variance is, would it cause a substantial detriment to the public good? And, you know, in that application, we might not have had neighbors. I didn't watch the video of that, but we might not have had so many neighbors protesting and potentially causing a disruption in the neighborhood by this, which this application kind of would. So,
well, it's funny you mentioned that. He actually did have a neighbor protest. Anyway, we don't need to get into details of that case, but it was really similar.
So on that note, have any of the issues with the HOA or the other neighbors that protested in the prior application, have any of those issues been resolved that we can take off the table?
Yes, in kind of my opening statements, I talked about Mr. Brannon, my neighbor to the west. He is on board with 18 feet, as long as I limit it to playground equipment and I don't, I maintain grass underneath the playground equipment. And he wanted it, a certain distance essentially from his house, which we ended up just calling it 140 feet from the front of the property line.
Yeah, but that one doesn't need a variance. I mean, if it was just playground equipment, you wouldn't need a variance for a setback. I wouldn't think.
I think your only words would be HOA with that.
I don't know. All I can comment is, he's the ones that sent in a note. The other neighbor, I only know of two neighbors that were in objection. Mr. McCassin to the west, again, I tried to speak to him. He did not want to talk to me. His only comment to me was that he was upset about the process when he built his building. And he drove away, shut his garage door, and I talked to his wife a few days before that, and she had no comment whatsoever.
Okay. Do you know, so one of the letters, there's some correspondence in here from the HOA that looked like it was the day after the meeting, and then maybe around a month after the meeting where the HOA still opposed. So do you know if the HOA still opposes everything?
Well, I can, here's what I can tell you. I am currently vice president of our HOA. I have been for about 3 months now. There has not been any discussion about this that I can say that has been had. I know a couple of the members, and I don't think any, kind of like my neighbor. I mean, I don't think there's anything I could say or do to convince them, but there has been no additional discussion about it that I'm aware of. And like I said, I'm currently a sitting board member of our HOA.
Okay. Board members, questions or comments to the applicant before we move to other speakers?
The total side yard setback is at 7 feet now.
5, 6, 7. Yes, that is correct.
I know in the last meeting, the board discussed 5 feet of a variance. So that, we're getting closer to that 5 foot mark. But I'll just throw that in there. Any other questions or comments from the board? Okay. Cindy, do you have anyone? I know I see a hand, but do you have anyone signed up? And do you have a particular order for the speakers?
No order. I just see the hand for Laverne that wants to speak.
Okay. Well, it's like Laverne, I don't see a last name, but you're recognized to speak at this time.
Okay, my name is Laverne Stroh. I'm the president of the Sundance Lakes HOA. I want to make a comment about Mr. McCaslin. He was not so much upset with the HOA when he built his building. He wanted to do it differently, but because of the HOA rules and knowing that he'd have to go through to get a variance, he followed the HOA rules. He would have probably liked to have put it in a different spot as well, but he knew the covenant said what they did, so that's what he followed. We also have several other people that are watching this closely and are wanting to build buildings. And normally we will, as the HOA board, if the city allows the 5 foot variance, the HOA board will allow the 5 foot variance. We have not ever allowed anything more than that. And although there aren't a lot of written comments, we as the HOA board, when this first went through, had many of the neighbors that did not agree with him being able to do what he was proposing. So the outcome of this case is really going to affect the HOA as far as how much fighting we're going to have to do with the other people that are wanting to build.
I could be wrong, but most covenants reference city ordinances as far as building size, stuff like that. Do your covenants not specify things like that?
No, our covenant says it's 25 feet from the side. And I'm guessing whatever was in place at the city at the time is what the covenants was written with.
Okay, so any size issues would be city related. They wouldn't be HOA related at all.
Correct.
All right. Okay.
Is the HOA's concern, I mean, and the prior concerns, at least to your knowledge, still with cramming this lot with a lot of more square footage than maybe is normal in this area?
That is the comments we got from the people that brought it to the HOA board, yes.
Okay. And then,
It would really look cluttered, and all the green space that people wanted when they moved out here would be gone.
okay. And then the size of the shop, is that a concern for anyone? I mean, I'm sure there, like you said, people lined up to get bigger shops if they can get one. But some people might be opposed to that as well. So.
The size of the shop is what others are looking at as well. If, depending on what is done here, then I'm sure we will get requests for having bigger ones as well.
Okay. Board members, any questions or comments? Okay. And then
I have a
Laverne.
question sorry, Mr. Chairman, I have a question for Laverne. Are you still getting as many objections with Mr. Craig's revised plan? Or are you still referring to the ones from the first hearing that we had?
Well, there really isn't much difference from the first one to this one, as far as, all that we're not looking at, I guess, according to the city now, is playground equipment and the doghouse. So there really isn't that big a change.
And the pool pavilion, correct? Mr. Craig, am I wrong about that?
My understanding is that has been removed.
Right. Okay.
Yeah. So that is a change, that slight change to the setback. I think that's, I think that larger animal accessory building is a little bit smaller, and the playground equipment was never included. I remember JJ talking about that at the prior meeting. That was never included. Okay. Laverne, did you have any other comments before we move on?
I think that, other than it's, this is really going to set a precedence for us and in the neighborhood. That's our big thing is we're going to have to do a lot of work from here on out if this goes through.
Yeah, understood. Okay. Well, thank you for your comments. Mr. Craig, if you wanted to address any of the comments, and then the board may have some further questions.
Yes, I would. I mean, again, I'll revert to my previous opening statements about, Mr. Privet was just asking about, what's in our covenants. I tried to get permission to submit our covenants for review.
Well, it's not relevant. I was just curious about the rest of the neighborhood.
I got you.
And yeah, it's not, your covenants aren't relevant in this meeting.
But I will say, the covenants do acknowledge the variance process in the covenant. I understand Laverne's concern about, setting precedent. But as Mr. Merchant said, every case should stand on its own, and they will have to go through the same process. They will have to present their issues. I know one property, they want to, and honestly, I think they may have an issue to stand on because, they back up to a pond. They're wanting to build the accessory building. Yeah, my only point is every case will have to come before the board. Y'all will make the same determination based on that case. just because this was approved doesn't guarantee approval. I mean, just like case 13873 was approved, it doesn't guarantee, my approval.
It gives them a case for a bigger building.
True, and my request is actually a smaller percentage than case 13873. And to Laverne's comment where there wasn't no change, I mean, we've dropped our request by almost 1,000 square feet. So I mean that's a pretty substantial change in my opinion.
So Mr. Craig, this is Kitty real quickly. Are all the lots basically the same size?
They're all approximately 1 acre. Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. They're all 1 acre lots. There are multiple buildings. This would probably be one of the larger, but I also have probably one of the larger homes in the addition. So proportionately speaking, it would. It's not out of proportionate with the size of our home. But yes, they're all approximately 1 acre lots.
Okay, because I was just listening to what Laverne was saying in the event that some people may want to build a larger building, and if those lots aren't the same, then that can pose a problem as far as clutter or looking cluttered anyway.
Yeah, no, they're all 1 acre, or there are some that are even larger than 1 acre. I would say Mr. McCassin probably has a larger lot than 1 acre, just kind of looking at the plat here. But this was a 1 acre development.
Okay. Board members, any other questions to the applicant before the board deliberates? Okay. Board members, I'll kind of give my overall thoughts, similar to the thoughts in the last meeting, which, there's always the argument that people should be able to do what they want with their land. Same time, Oklahoma City is a great city. It's an amazing city. There's a reason why we all live here. And that comes with certain rules and regulations that have to be followed. You can obviously get a variance to some of that by coming to our board, but the neighbors in this neighborhood, in this area, wanted to live in Oklahoma City, presumably knowing that there were these regulations and possibly knowing that it would be very difficult to develop something like this in the city. And if they wanted some kind of Wild West type of development, they can go out to the more rural areas and kind of do whatever they want with their land. But if you're going to
just go to more.
Build in Oklahoma City, you can go to more, you can go even more rural than that and do pretty much whatever you want. But in the city, there's, some of these regulations, and I think some of the neighbors probably bought houses in this area for that reason, because they had the option to go just a little bit further outside the rural areas and do whatever they want. So given that, it's a pretty high bar for me to grant a variance. The variance request, as it currently sits, is still over 100% of what's allowed, which is a huge variance that, we're usually in the realm of a couple of percent to maybe 10-20%. And so you're talking about over 100%. That's a pretty massive variance. I think there's certainly an argument that the covered patio, maybe doesn't get the same scrutiny as maybe an accessory building. But all said and done, I mean, I can't support the application as it sits. I could support a pretty mild variance. I could get on board with 5 feet for the setback. As far as a square foot, it's not going to be very helpful to the applicant probably, but I could get on board with 1,500 square feet. But that makes to me, that makes the application probably unworkable, because at the end of the day, that shop is going to have to come down in size substantially if you want all the other stuff. And if that happens, you might not be able to fit the RV in there, so it might be useless anyway. So that's kind of where I am. I don't know if it could be reworked to have a variance in that realm. I can certainly be outvoted by the rest of the board. It's happened before. But if we're kind of in that realm, I could get on board with it, and maybe we could continue it and see if this application could be revised. if not, which is kind of where I don't think it could be probably reworked to something like that. I think we just go ahead and take a vote on it as drafted, or unless other board members have thoughts on revisions that might be workable and can certainly outvote me. But those are my thoughts. Board members, any other comments?
Sam, I think it goes kind of in line with what you were saying, and maybe I'm just saying it a different way, but I can't quite get around the statutory standard that this is the minimum necessary to alleviate the unnecessary hardship. I know that you've identified a couple of things that are hardship on your property, Mr. Craig, but as far as the minimum necessary to alleviate that, I don't think has to include doing any and everything that you've proposed here. And so if you think that there's a way to go back and revise your plan and maybe remove something else or make a smaller shop building if you're willing to do that, or if that's even an option, I might be able to view this in terms of meeting that particular statutory standard. But that's the one that it's, to me, is kind of, and Sam, I think it goes to your point as far as just the size of it. I can't get there as far as it being minimum necessary.
So, Mr. Craig,
Yes, ma'am.
in a 30 by 50 shop, like Monica just said, is there any way that you can make it larger and it still meets your need? And as far as that 500-foot patio that you're wanting, can you reduce that as well? Because I think you can pick up some footage in those areas.
Yes, ma'am. I'm open to revising this. One comment I would like to make in terms of like the shop size. You know, I'm not sure when this statute was written, but I mean, there's been a lot of things obviously change. One of them's COVID. I mean, we're even doing Zoom board meetings. You know, like our Cub Scouts, you know, need a place to hold meetings. You know, we used to hold them in a church, and that church, they're limiting meetings there. I mean, even our HOA is looking for a place to have meetings. I mean, I could probably make the 5-foot setback work. I would have to probably off center the door on the shop, but I could probably make that work. In terms of the size, I would probably rather eliminate the second accessory building first, which would then basically just leave the 1,500 square foot shop and the open patio, which would bring the request down to 2,000 square feet. I don't know if anything, you know, in terms of structures, you know, that'd only be 250 square feet over the over the 1,250. I mean, would something like that be more agreeable?
I mean, it's getting closer, but you know, we can't just ignore that a covered patio is considered is supposed to be added in there. So for our purposes, or else, you know, I think people could find some pretty savvy ways around the rules and the statutes or the code provisions.
Well, yeah,
we did
no,
stuff.
I agree 100%, and that's kind of why I had that map of showing, you know, residences that were currently not in compliance. You know, I didn't want to be one of those people who permitted a 1,200 square foot shop and then added a patio later and you know didn't say anything about it.
Yeah, I mean, to me, the patio is not that offensive. Frankly, it's. I think it's going to be attached, and it's not offensive, but it's just the size of that shop that
And the patio
I
is
think the
also,
board's struggling with. So
the patio is also on the interior. I mean, the only way you could even see the patio is if you were essentially in my backyard. I mean, it's blocked by the house from the front. It's blocked from the side of the shop on the sides. You know, it doesn't make the accessory building any taller.
yeah, no, I understand. That's the least of my worries. But again, it's just the size of that shop, and you know, and again, I think we can get through the setback issue, but I don't know if the smaller shop is still even going to be useful to you. You know, so
Well, no, I mean, it definitely is. I mean, it definitely beats no shop and no patio. You know, I mean, I could probably bring. Give me 1 second. Let me crunch a number here. Um, um, I mean, I could probably really easy knock. Well, I say really easy. We could probably drop the patio by 50 square feet and the building by by 50 square feet, pretty easy. So that'd be another 100 square feet. Or I guess just I mean, would 1450 and 450 be better?
I mean, you know, the cap that I've been talking about, which is around 14, 15 for all of it. And so again, I don't know how much you need for your particular RV or if it's already purchased or not, but to put in there. I mean, heck, you know, Mr. Ybarra talked about this, but being able to store an RV, it's tough to even say that that's a hardship. You know, that you're not able to store an RV. So that's another issue that you have to struggle with. And so if we are going to say that's a hardship, then it needs to be a very limited variance.
Well, I don't necessarily know that was the only hardship listed, but I do understand the point. I mean, without the patio, I have no shade. I mean, I'm not able to build. I won't be able to build a pergola. I mean, there are no trees in this area. I mean, we just I won't have any place, you know, to get out of the sun or get in the shade. Even if you built a 1,200 square foot shop, I mean, that would leave no room for a patio. I mean, I'm going to reference back to case 13873.
I mean, from my perspective, though, if you came to us and said, "I'm going to build a shop that's within the code requirement, and all I need a variance for is this covered patio that no one's even going to see, it's internal," we'd probably work with you a lot. But you can't ignore the fact that there's going to be this huge shop there that is going to need a variance. I say all that though. Heck, I could be outvoted, so you know the other board members might be on board with what you're thinking. So, board members, where are you on this application so far?
Right there, yeah. And
Yeah,
you
and
get
I'm just
25 by 45 and get 1,100 square feet roughly.
And then Ms. Ybarra?
Sorry, Mike. And like I said, I'm still continuing to struggle with the hardship. I actually was thinking more, Mr. Craig, along, the things that you did cite in your application, like the water drainage and things like that. Those I understand that's why you can't build the shop building in a certain place. But again, I can probably get on board with seeing that as a hardship and peculiar to your piece of property, but it's like all of this is still in my mind, it's too much, and I don't see all of this as the minimum necessary to alleviate a specific hardship. So that's where I am. And I'll just say, because you've mentioned this several times, this case 13873, you submitted it as in our materials, so I did take time to look over it. I did not go back and listen to the hearing, but I mean, I won't take the time to do that here, but there are several distinguishing factors about that case than this one. And so that's not persuasive for me as a board member. You have every right to make your case, and it may be persuasive to other board members, but there was just some very distinguishing factors about that application. So it's not persuasive for me anyway.
Okay.
I think it might be helpful if we continued this one more time and look at revised drawings. Now that you got a little bit more feedback from the board. I mean, I'd hate for the motion and the vote to go to deny. Might be easier to rework your revised plans. And what's our next meeting? April 1, or what are we? April 1?
That's 2 weeks. I don't know if that's one that we skipped, but that's 2 weeks.
Whatever would be next.
Yep. I was going to recommend the same thing, just in case, give you one more shot, just in case you're able to tweak this, given our comments today. And then if you're not, just tell us you're not. But, just something maybe for your benefit is you've already paid the application fee, and you already want some of this stuff done. So what I was trying to avoid doing was just denying this variance altogether, and then you having to come back in 6 months or a year with a totally different request to get done what you're trying to get done, at least in part. And so continuing this, I think, makes sense to you, just so you can applicate and see a way that the board could get on board with.
What,
So
can you give me a little more direction? I mean, is it,
And the overall square footage, I believe, for most of us.
so, I mean, is it more so the 250 square foot on the shop building, or is it the 500 square foot open covered patio? I mean, which one should I try to?
Some of both. I mean,
yeah,
a 1,500 foot shop by itself, I think we could get on board with. It's just adding that extra 500 foot that's getting us.
yeah, and even that, I might have some issues with that big of a shop. But although maybe not 250 shop alone, maybe not. But just given that if we do that, everyone in the neighborhood is going to come get a 1,500 square foot shop, or at least try to. And so if that gets trimmed down substantially, I think the patio probably gets trimmed down along with it, and we get something that's workable.
Yeah, and that's where my comment from Moore comes in. You go to Moore, they've got many neighborhoods that are out of control with supersized shops. It's crazy. I mean, they're one upping each other all over the place, and they've got some big shops there. I know that's not going to happen here, but it's just like we said, sets a precedent. So I don't want to do that.
Yeah, and that was my first point was, I think people probably they generally move into these different areas with this stuff in mind. So maybe you move into more thinking you can get a big shop like that. And that's why you move in, and your neighbors move in knowing that they might have to look at huge shops all around them forever and might build one themselves, but that goes into why you move into a particular area. And so, the folks in this neighborhood, I think, moved in thinking one thing, and is this board going to be the one that changes all that and turns that neighborhood into something that looks like it came out of Moore? Okay. Well, I think, Mr. Craig, if you would like a continuance, you can request one. If you'd like us to just take a vote, we can certainly do that.
Well, I had one more comment. I was trying to decide if I wanted to. But let me ask it this way: Do any existing structures that are currently in excess of city codes that are existing that don't have a variance? I mean, does that? I guess my comment goes to your comment. You know, people move in an area, they see things. I don't necessarily know that that was my case, but there's buildings not too far from mine that.
If you think somebody's not up to code, you can always call the action center and report them if you want to. I mean,
Yeah, and I see. I understand where you're going. I mean, you moved into this area potentially, seeing some of those buildings and thinking, "Oh, I'll just get one of those." So, I understand what you're saying. I mean, we don't know. They might have a variance. It could be 20 years old. You know, who knows? But
yeah. Well, I worked with Cindy and Mark some, and we did some pretty good research on where variances were and where they weren't. But
yeah,
yeah. But yeah, so I'll request another variance. What is next? Sorry, I'm trying.
There, our meeting dates are April 1 and April 15th.
Okay.
Could we move it out further than that?
This is one I wouldn't want to move it too far, but I don't mind moving it out a little bit because it's not like there's something already there that's out of compliance or something. So, Cindy, I'm sure, I think we have one meeting in May.
We have May the 6th and May the 20th.
Okay, so we have 2 that month. So,
June, we go down to 1.
Okay. So, Mr. Craig, I think the board will work with you on any of those dates in May.
Okay. Will they still be Zoom, or do you know? Or?
It'll probably be Zoom. Probably going to depend on what City Council decides to do as our COVID numbers go down, but it'll probably be Zoom.
Let's just do the first one in May.
Okay. So May 6th, and then I recommend reaching out to the HOA and trying to flip them to support.
I doubt that's going to happen.
Well, you're a VP now, so you can move some weight around.
But I mean, you say that, but I mean, I thought we established that the HOA disputes weren't supposed to be considered.
Oh no, they're not. It just helps if there are no protests and everyone's in support of it. It can only help your application. That's all I meant by that.
But should an HOA protest even be on record? I mean, if it's not.
Well, the HOA is made up of your neighbors, so I mean, as far as your neighbors are concerned, then yes.
Yeah, and we've dealt with that issue, and I think it's our bylaws that say any interested party, so they don't even really need to be neighbors. It can be anyone who says they're interested in the matter can oppose and protest. Board members, do we have a motion to continue this item to May 6th?
I move we continue it to May 6th.
Second.
Okay, got a motion and a second to continue case number 14780 to the May 6th, 2021 meeting. Once you're able to, cast your votes. And the item's continued.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay, item 2 is case 14827. It's a request of Ron and Roberta Pendarvis for a variance to the accessory building regulations at 1713 Northeast 44th Street.
Okay, I think I saw the applicant.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
I've got a very strong echo. So if one of you could mute your mics or.
Yeah.
Like in a very wild 70s music video or something. So who is the representative that's going to speak for this application? And if there are more than one people, we can certainly hear from more than one, but if the first representative can introduce themselves now. I see a baby. That would be the youngest representative you probably had. Get some points for persuading the board. Mr. Pendarvis, I think you're on mute. I think I hear you trying to speak, but you're on mute.
There we go.
Okay, perfect.
All right, can you hear me now?
Yes.
Start over. My name is Ronald Pendarvis. We reside at 1713 Northeast 44. We're putting in for this variance to have a garage put in the back. We have a pretty large lot, but our home, we don't have a garage on our home. So when we bought it with the large lot, we just assumed we was going to put a garage in the back. And now that time's come. I was just totally ignorant. The extra permits and stuff like that. We just don't have anywhere to store, anything as far as vehicles. I also have 3 classic vehicles that need to be inside that I want to pass down to my sons, but them sitting out in the elements and the boat. So all these things sitting out in the elements, I'm gonna be passing down a rust bucket over the years. So to avoid that situation and having somewhere to park the garage, we just always planned on putting the garage in the back. And now that time's come here, we're putting in for this variance at this time to have a 40 by 40 build, 1,600 square feet. 1,600 square feet. We don't have a HOA association here. We don't have any objections from our neighbors. So
We got the letters.
we have our letter. We sent in all our letters. So
For the neighbors that are.
it wasn't any problem.
The property line.
Okay. And we receive those. That's always helpful to see what the folks around think. We can certainly raise our own objections, even if none of the neighbors object, which we do all the times. But this one, I think it's a different area than the last kind of different part of town. A lot bigger lot, and it's not really being crammed into a lot of stuff into a lot. I don't know, board members, any questions or comments?
I didn't see.
And you did
any
not have
problem.
any. Correct. I didn't see any. I'll check in just a second. Mr. Pendarvis, I don't think you need a setback variance or anything, do you? Okay. And then the staff report notes that the lot is large and the building is going to be located at the back of the lot. Is that correct? I don't have anyone signed up to speak on this application. Cindy, did you have anyone signed up that you're aware of?
No, sir.
Okay, we'll wait a few minutes or a couple of moments, but did anyone else want to speak on this application?
Is that an acre lot, JJ? Or a little over?
Yeah, it looks like it might be a little bit over.
Yeah. Okay. Seeing no other comments or people signed up, I think board, we're ready for a motion.
I'll move approval. I got a little bit of sympathy for the cars.
I'll second.
Okay. Got a motion and a second to approve the variance request in case 14827 for the reason that it meets the statutory conditions for a variance. Once you're able to, cast your votes, please. And it's approved.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Okay, item 3 is 14828. It's a request of Quail Springs Corporate Park Association for a variance to allow a sign in the street right-of-way at Quail Springs Parkway and May Avenue.
Okay, is the applicant or representative on the line?
Chair, I was unable to reach the applicant because I do not see them logged in. I tried to make a call and got no answer.
Okay. For now, we'll push that to the end of the agenda and move to the next item.
Okay, that will be item 4. Case 14829. It's an application for a special exception of Luke Richardson to allow home sharing at 1013 Northwest 33rd Street.
Okay, is Mr. Richardson on the line? I think I saw him and then maybe had some phone issues, so we'll wait a couple of minutes.
I see Luke there.
Yeah, and his video was on earlier, so we'll go ahead and move it to the.
Can you hear me?
We're just about to skip
Yes,
you, but
he's
yeah, we
there.
can hear you. Mr. Richardson?
Went into the abyss.
I'm here. Can you hear me?
Okay, if you wanted to introduce yourself. Yes, we can hear you. If you want to introduce yourself and by name and address
sir.
and then present your application.
I'm Luke Richardson. I'm the property owner of 1013 Northwest 33rd. It's a duplex there, and I am applying to for a home sharing exemption on the 1013 side.
Okay. Can you tell us a little bit about this property? How many bedrooms, how many people you expect to allow in this property at a time?
It's set up for 2 beds, 1 bath. Going to limit guests to 4. Owned it, I think, 3 years now. Remodeled it. I've had 1 couple living on the other side for 3 years, which they're actually moving out next month. Has a 2-lane driveway, so it can park 4 cars. Street parking is not really an issue there as far as that goes, but I'm going to ask all the guests that stay to park on the east side of the driveway. That's how I divided up with the tenants. The tenants on 1015 park on the west side, and then tenants in the past on 1013 will park on the east side of the driveway.
Okay. Do you expect to convert the other property? You said the long-term tenants are moving out, if I heard you correctly. Do you expect to convert that to home sharing as well or not?
Honestly, I don't know at this point. This is, I mean, I have in that within a mile of this, I have 22 properties total. This is my first experience with doing home sharing. Heard good things about it. I didn't even know that I had to do this here. I thought it was as simple as paying the license, and then once kind of digging in and furnishing the house and all that, I realized that you had to file for a special exemption. And so it's honestly just going to wait and see how much, how it is. I've heard good things from friends that do it, but I have, no experience doing the Airbnb type of rental compared to just your long-term. So, potentially I would, but definitely not be buying furniture until I have the variance approved.
Okay. You kind of cut out for a little bit of that, at least
Did you
online.
hear any of that?
Yeah, I heard, I think I got the gist of most of it, but cut out for a little while, but um, just something that we keep an eye on is, how many of these home sharing properties are going up in a particular area.
Right.
And so, we might scrutinize your next one a little bit if you just decide to convert that other side into home sharing. I think we kind of prefer not to have as many home sharing properties in the city if we can. And so, we'll have a little more scrutiny on the next one, but for this one, it makes sense. From what I see, some of the rules that you've put in here that we often incorporate into special exceptions is you've mentioned parking off street and also no parties. So that's already a rule that you're self-imposing, but sometimes we like to have people add that to the special exception to make sure that they advertise the properties as not having parties and having off-street parking only. So would that be a problem for your application?
Not at all.
Okay. How long were you hoping to get? It can go up to 10 years. We have not granted one for anything close to that. But how long were you hoping to get a special exception for?
Once again, kind of new at this, didn't know that it was an ongoing issue, but I mean, I would say if it doesn't pan out in the next 2 years max for me, that I would give it a go. And then if it wasn't financially viable, I would just go back to the long-term rental.
Okay.
But yeah,
that makes sense to me. That makes me more comfortable with it, particularly in this area because it's a growing and kind of rapidly developing area. So
right.
2 years is fine with me if it's okay with you. And then these applications are a little bit cheaper than some of the variance applications, so it's not quite as big of a financial hit to come back in 2 years if you need to renew it. And
Okay.
potentially, if it's probably for 2 years, maybe you can get it for a longer period of time. Board members, any questions or comments of the applicant? I don't have anyone or any protest letters. I don't see anyone signed up to speak, but does anyone that's on the line want to speak on this application? Okay. Hearing none, board members, questions, comments, or a motion?
I'll move approval for 2 years, subject to the incorporation in his advertising of what he calls additional rules that's set out in the application.
Second.
Awesome.
Okay, we've got a motion and a second to approve the special exception in case number 14829 for a period of 2 years on the condition that the applicant incorporates the additional rules and advertise in accordance with the additional rules as set out in the application. Once you're able to, cast your votes, please. And it's approved. Thank you.
Item 5, 14-830, request of Bart Baker for a variance to the rear setback regulations at 15700 Via Sierra.
The applicant on the line?
Yes, sir.
Okay. You wanted to introduce yourself by name and address and present your application?
Absolutely. Yes, my name is Bart Baker. I'm the lot owner and also one of the co-builders, and just submitting a variance for the back of the property for a 5-foot setback opposed to a 10-foot setback, like the adjacent neighbors have already requested. Was given the approval from the city after submitting plans, site plans, and unfortunately was told after footing and stem had been poured that I was to stop construction and that they had made a mistake on allowing it before the variance was approved.
Okay, and JJ or Cindy, is this a true mistake, or is this one where this for some reason wasn't submitted to the city? I know we've had some.
I think it was a true mistake. Normally, if you look at this lot, the house faces via Sierra. So one might assume that the north property line, because it's a side of the other house and a corner lot, that it was a side setback rather than a rear.
Those houses south of there on city setbacks, man, they look close. There's,
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's,
I'm asking for the same variance as my neighbor to the west had been approved on a front variance and a rear variance, which is also 5 feet. And so I'm just asking for the same request. Obviously, would have certainly done it if the city would have told me initially, but unfortunately now with these circumstances, I'm asking for it, the variance to be approved now.
What impact would this have on some of these other lots that are these, I guess didn't see how many of these were vacant, but I wonder by granting this, or is everyone else going to want, or other properties going to need a variance in the future?
This particular area is kind of an island, if you will. And most of the properties, because the lots are so small, have requested a variance. And so that's why my neighbor to the west has the same setback from the back of his property of 5 foot as well. I don't know that the neighbor to my direct north had submitted a variance, but the rear of their house is actually closer than 5 feet to the property line. And I couldn't find a variance that had been applied for that.
Questions or comments?
This is Kitty. Did I hear Mr. Baker correctly? Did you say you were also the builder for this property as well?
Tom Pollard is the builder, but I have experience, and so I'm building with Tom. That is correct.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, no problem. Tom Pollard is the builder, is the general contractor.
Yeah, I mean, I can reluctantly support it. I mean, I see it as maybe an opportunity to fix a problem that started long ago, but if the rest of the board can go on board with it, I could reluctantly go on board with it.
I'm just looking at this neighborhood. They're mostly house, no yard. Like,
Yeah, it's definitely a neighborhood where the neighborhood association pays for the lots to be mowed. So it's certainly a what you would maybe consider a garden home community. So yeah, there's not very many. And again, I certainly would have done this a different way if been told by the city that this specific plan was going to cause any type of issues, but obviously wasn't made aware of that until we had already started construction.
Yeah, and I'm not accusing you of anything, but you know, we want to prevent people. I'd be more comfortable if you had supplied, you know, and submitted what you submitted to the city, and then with dates on it, and then the date of your approval and all that. So it's a clear-cut mistake. Right now, we've got.
I did, and I
think-
submitted the letter from the city that stated it was a mistake. The city even wrote a letter that suggested that it was a mistake, as well as I submitted 39 pages in my application.
Board members, did you get that in your packets? I didn't get that. I got this page that we're looking at right here.
Yeah.
He submitted the Board of Adjustment application that was approved in 2019 for the neighbor to the north, the 15708. And I don't see a letter from downstairs, but we did, I mean, it appears on the notes on the system that it was an error.
Yeah, I submitted that in a 39-page PDF. And
Not-
I can share that document if you want me to from the city, that was written from the city.
I don't think we were
Cindy?
questioning the, that it was not an error.
Okay, well, I mean, that's my kind of only thing, just to clear the issue up, so that people in the future can't just, and I think they might in the future say, oh, well, the city messed up, but not providing documentation. I'd like all that stuff to be documented just to avoid that problem in the future. That's all I'm saying there. Do you have it on your computer by chance, just so it can get
do.
in the record?
Yeah,
Okay, Cindy, are we able to share a screen?
you want me to share, she's going to share my screen? Is that correct?
If she's able to.
He can now share his screen.
He can now do it.
Okay, thank you. I'll pull it up real quick so that you guys can quickly.
And this just gets it into the video record for future purposes.
Cindy, you want to go ahead and stop yours?
Okay, I'm sorry.
And the document you want me to pull up is the city document, is that correct?
Yeah, if you give just an overview of that 39-page PDF that you
Oh, yeah.
referenced, and then that includes.
Yeah, sorry about that.
No problem.
Please let me know when you can see my screen. Are you able to see it now?
Okay, yeah, we can see it.
I'll expand my screen and tell me if you want me to. Let me see if I can make this a little bit smaller so that it. So here's the site plan. My neighbor's next to me as well. That's just an aerial view. This is my west neighbor that submitted the application that has a 5-foot setback, as well as was granted a variance from the front. And then
It's like we had the first part of this, but some of this stuff was new to me.
yeah, sorry. So let me, I don't know which, where that actual email or was provided to me from the city. And I'm happy to pull it up since it was sent to me from the city inspector in an email form.
That right there.
Is this it?
No.
Oh, forgive me.
That was from John, so that would have been the first one. Or some other time.
Oh, these are my, well, I submitted in the 39-page document was also the variance that was approved by the neighbor to the west. So forgive me on that, if that's what I'm looking at. I've only applied once.
And I have all this in the file. I just didn't have that letter.
Forgive me, guys. I'm just going to pull up the email so I can just provide it to you if it's for some reason. Might be easier to find than specifically.
If you want to stop sharing while you log in, that's fine. If you don't care, that's fine. Too.
It doesn't matter to me, guys. Thank you. Do you guys, without me having to search too deep, do you guys specifically know who that city inspector probably would have been that would have filed that letter to me?
I don't have a name.
again, I certainly can assure you that I have it.
You can try searching okc.gov.
Thank you. That will help. Yeah, forgive me. Let me stop sharing. I'm going to look at my other inbox, okay? Because I do have that document.
Okay.
Thank you for your patience.
And Cindy, have you seen if the other application that we continued, if that applicant was able to log in?
I will check.
Okay, I did find it.
Okay.
Sure, I'll share my screen one more time. Please let me know if you can see my screen.
Yes.
So it's from Scott Wise.
Yeah, so this was one of my questions was what was submitted to the city, did that include you know, a site plan that was in compliance? And this one, it looks like it says that the architect's site plan didn't show the expected 10-foot rear setback and the city messed up. So it looks like kind of a dual issue here. So certainly some fault, it looks like on the city, but for approving that, but okay. Board members, questions or comments?
We didn't have any objections or protests, did we?
Please.
I didn't see anyone signed up.
Okay.
Is there anyone on the line other than the applicant that wanted to speak on this application? Okay. Yeah, this to me looks like kind of one of the ones that we see where there's been a mistake and you know, they come after the fact, except on this one, we've also got, I guess, the city admitting that they also made a mistake. So kind of a two-part mistake.
Neighborhood looks like a mistake.
What's that?
I said the whole neighborhood looks like a mistake.
Yeah, the whole area.
That I see, I don't see any setbacks.
Yeah.
Yeah, the neighbors that are adjacent to me, I would think would have the most objection, and both of them are obviously sitting closer than the 10-foot setback.
Yeah.
They're
I mean,
like maybe 5 foot apart, building to building.
Yeah, and it's not really even just if the neighbors oppose. I mean, the setback's there for a reason. So if this one house catches on fire, is it our fault that they now all catch on fire because they need?
Right, that's what I'm saying about that cul-de-sac. It's like one giant house.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
But yeah, this being on a corner lot probably helps the case most for me.
Yeah, that helps, and the fact that it is as the applicant said, it's isolated on this kind of island. That doesn't particularly help if there is a problem that's caused, but at least the problem will be contained to this little island. So I can get on board with it. Is there these other lots? I mean, are those vacant right now and undeveloped right now?
No, there's only 2 lots in that island that are still currently open. In that island, there's, I think one of them is actually owned by the neighbors. So technically it's not really a lot. I guess it is if they wanted to section it off again. And and then there's one remaining lot open in that island.
Okay. And Cindy, would you mind taking over just so we can get an idea of where that is? Based on this overview that we've got in our packet, so we can see which ones are still undeveloped.
Do I need to stop sharing?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, so, Mr. Baker, which two are undeveloped?
The one where the property sets, it's actually 3 to the north, I guess you could say. The other direction. There you go. That one is currently vacant. And then the one catty corner from it that is also a corner lot. That one, correct. And that one is, to my knowledge, owned by the neighbor to the east.
Okay, so granting this, if we grant this variance, it's not necessarily going to impact those two undeveloped lots.
Mm-mm.
It looks like the damage is done in this little area based on the issues that are before us. And if those get developed, ideally, there's going to be a lot of scrutiny and those will be developed within the code requirements, is what it looks like. Does that sound correct? Mr. Baker?
Yes.
Did you hear my question?
Well, you said, would there be scrutiny by the neighborhood or by the city in regards to those lots?
Those two undeveloped lots, I just wanted to make sure that we're not, just granting variances for this entire little area. And those two undeveloped ones would eventually need variances, or if those were going to be developed according to code, if you had any idea.
I honestly don't. I don't have any ownership in either one of those, nor do I know the individuals that do own them.
Okay. Well, I think that those two properties that are adjacent to this property, if those were undeveloped, I think maybe we could try to fix this whole situation right now, but it's kind of gotten a little out of hand. So looks like the variance is probably the only thing we can do for this area. So I can support this one. I don't know where the rest of the board is, but board members, any questions, comments, or emotion?
Move approval for this application. For the reason that it meets the statutory requirement.
I can barely hear Ms. Ybarra, but I think that was a motion.
Yes, can you hear me now, Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
Okay, I said I'll move approval for case number 14830 for the reason that it meets the statutory requirement for a variance.
Okay.
I'll second.
We've got a motion and a second to approve the variance request in case number 14830 for the reason that it meets the statutory conditions for variance. Cast your votes, please. And it's approved.
Thank you, sir. Thank you,
Thank
everyone.
you. And then JJ, I think that takes us back to Quail Springs Corporate Park.
Yes, Cindy, do we have an applicant?
No applicant online, and I tried to call and there was no response.
Okay, out of a courtesy to the applicant, I think we can do a one-time continuance by motion, if the board agrees, to continue this item to the next board meeting, which is May 1st, I believe. I'm sorry, April 1st.
April 1st.
I move we continue this one to April 1.
Second.
Okay, we've got a motion and a second to continue case 14828 to the April 1st meeting.
Just to let them know April Fool's doesn't apply to their application.
Staff can let them know
Mike.
it's not a joke. Yeah, I'll have to think of a prank for that meeting, I guess. That's all the items on the consent docket. So move to additional items. See nothing on the agenda under additional items. Double check here. Communications and board reports. I have nothing on the agenda. Citizens to be heard. Is there anyone on the line that was hoping to be heard on any item or matter? Okay. Hearing none. Other business from board or city?
None.
Okay.
No.
Hearing none, we are adjourned. Thanks, everyone.
Bye,
you.
thank you.
See you guys.
Bye.